Hello and welcome back to another one of Forward Camera's camera tutorials. Today we're going to learn about this classic Yashica TL-E circa 1969. It's an SLR 35mm camera, and we're going to learn a lot about how to use this camera together. So join me. Also, please subscribe. That really helps the channel and supports our cause. So let's have a look at this camera. First thing, this is cool because it's an M42 screw mount lens. They're very easy to get, and you can use a number of manufacturers, which makes it very adaptable. They're also fairly affordable lenses too. Right now it says Sears, but it was made by Mamiya. So this is a Mamiya Sakura lens, which they're really nice. This particular one. So how do you take the lens off and, change different lenses, which you can do on this camera? You just simply unscrew it. So you would move the aperture all the way to 16, and you would just unscrew the lens until it comes off, and boom, it comes right off, right? And to put the lens back on, and you could change the different lenses, right? You would just screw it back in until it doesn't go anymore, all right? So now we're back, right? And you could switch the aperture over here. So aperture will be here, right? Focus is over here. Shutter speeds are over here. So we want to learn how to use this camera from the very beginning. So what you have to do in order to open this camera is you take this little area here, right? And you pop it open, see? And you move it all the way up and it pops the back off, right? And you're ready to put your 35mm color or black and white film inside the camera. So you would put the end of the spool in here. You would lock it in by pushing this down in the bottom of the spool, and then you would move the film across the back here, try to be as flush as possible. And then in here, there's these sort of little areas, right, where you're gonna feed the film inside, and you're going to, as soon as the edge of the film's in there, you're going to advance it a little bit. Here it's actually advanced already, so I'm going to advance it one over, right? And it would keep it nice and flush. And once it's flush, you close the door until it clicks and it's locked. See, it clicked and it locks. And you'll notice that the top over here, and I'm going to get close, right? Right now it says S, it's red, right? Which means it's the start. So we want to press the shutter, advance again, and then we're going to keep going until we hit the number 1. So once we hit the number 1, right, we're going to keep going until we hit that number 1. Right, now we're on the number 1. That means it's going to be our first photo. So we want to stop, right? We don't want to take that photo. That's the one that's going to be exposed properly and not exposed by the light, right? So how do we use this camera? Well, this one is pretty cool. It's got a very interesting looking shutter in the inside of the camera. A lot of cameras from this time period have a little sort of either some type of needle that goes up and down, right? Or, but this one has these 2 arrows that light up that tell you to either, it's overexposed, it's on the right, if it's a right arrow, and it's underexposed if it's the other way around. And you want to get right in the middle of the 2 arrows. So you would set your aperture first in one way. If you want to talk about depth of field, like a blurry background, right? Maybe 1.4, or super sharp, everything in focus is 16, right? But it also, right, the aperture, for those of us who don't know, right, the aperture is something that is inside the lens that gets smaller or bigger, right? That lets in less light or more light, which changes the depth of field of the photo. And you would switch the aperture to your setting that you want for whatever type of composition you're looking for. And then you would change your shutter speed. So right now it's at 1/500th of a second, the highest shutter speed for this camera. And you would, slow it down maybe until you get the arrows go right in the middle, right? It's not too much on the right, and it's not too much on the left, right? And that means that your exposure is proper. But you need to have, and I forgot to mention, there needs to be a battery. So the battery would go in here, right? And one more thing about this camera is that you don't want to drain the battery. So there's an on and off switch for the light meter, and that's located over here. So you'll notice that there's an arrow pointing downwards, right, for the switch. That means it says on. So in order for the light meter to function, you have to actually click the light meter switch downwards to turn it on so you don't drain the battery, and then you would move it back up so that you turn it off, right, when you're not using it. But the camera will still work without the light meter, right? So if your battery dies and you can just use your cell phone light meter, see, no battery in this camera right now, and the shutter is working just fine, right? So you can hear the difference between 1/500th of a second, and then I can move down to 1/2 of a second, the slowest speed, right? And then bulb mode, right, which you would use for very long exposures set up on a tripod with an external, I forgot the name of it. It's like a little cord that you press down to keep the shutter open for however long you want. Another thing that's important to know is that for your light meter, every film has different speed. So you would need to set the film speed according to whatever one you purchase. So sometimes it's 200 ASA. Sometimes it's 400 ASA, right? It depends. So how would you do that? So you notice there's a little number in there, and right now it's reading 200. So to change it, you would lift up. There's a little ring outside here. See, with my finger, I lift upwards and I move it. See, I can move it. And you could change it to whatever speed you want, and then you just leave it and it will click, right? And you don't want to move that around while you have one film inside, because it would mess up your light meter reading. So one more thing, you can set this up on a tripod and use the automatic timer over here to take a photo of yourself and a bunch of other people. So how do you do that? So you would first wind and advance the camera forward over here on the top. You would move this down all the way, and then you would press the shutter, and this would start to move like a timer, and then all of a sudden it will take the photo after a certain period of time, and you will hear it like kind of making a noise with the timer. Okay, and now when you're done, like let's just say you've done all 36 photos, or you've done all 24 photos, depending upon how much is in your film spool, you would want to rewind it, right? So you have to press this little button on the bottom, you press it in, and the top over here, there's a little arrow and there's a little handle that will pop out, see? And you will move it around clockwise until you hear a click, and that means your film is back in the spool and you're ready to take it out. So you would unlock it by popping this open and taking it right out, and then popping your new spool in, just like we did before. And the last and final part of this camera is that it can take flash. So you would put the flash up here, and some flashes would just directly be able to talk to the camera through the hot shoe on the top. And some actually require an extra cable to plug in over here. And in order to use the flash on this camera, you would need to set the camera on 1/60th of a second, which is the X. And it should work fine after that. And overall, it's a great classic camera. Yashicas are very fun to use, and I highly recommend it, especially because it takes this screw mount lens, which are very easily, you can find them all over the place. So I'd like to thank you for watching our video, and I hope that you subscribe to our channel to support our cause. Go to our website, forwardcameras.com, to check out our shop, not only cameras, but vintage items. Subscribe to our Instagram, which is @forwardcameras, and also follow us at Twitter @forwardcameras. And you know, it really helps our cause, and it really helps what we do. See you next time. Bye-bye.